The listing materialized at 3 a.m. on a freight forum I had been monitoring compulsively for half a year. No employer listed, no specifics past the essentials. Solo run, long distance, Fairbanks to coordinate supplied later. Locked freight, 50 grand upon arrival. Confidentiality mandatory. I stared at the display in my cheap motel room, the pale glow casting eerie shadows across the cramped quarters in Anchorage. $50,000. Sufficient to retain the attorney who could finally exonerate me. Sufficient to escape residences where the television was bolted to the dresser and the water never reached a decent temperature. My dishonorable discharge, unjust, and built on fabrications I lacked the funds to challenge, had tainted every lawful prospect. The transport firms that recruited former soldiers glanced at my records and escorted me out. My cursor lingered over the reply icon. Every lesson from my military supply chain experience shouted that genuine contracts were never advertised on underground sites at 3 in the morning. Yet necessity possesses a talent for silencing caution. I entered veteran CDL holder immediately available. The answer arrived within moments. Fairbanks North Star Storage, Bay 7, tomorrow 1800 hours. Arrive unaccompanied. Inquire for Lynn. 20 hours afterward, I stood on a frost-covered lot on the edge of Fairbanks while the December sun offered its feeble, fleeting visit low on the southern horizon. The thermometer hovered at -15, and my exhalations froze instantly. The storage compound appeared deserted. Chain-link fence crowned with concertina wire, surveillance lenses likely inoperative for years, endless ranks of cargo containers rusting in the endless freeze. Bay 7 lay at the far end, and that was where I discovered it. The Kenworth W900 was vintage, perhaps early 90s, yet preserved with a meticulous care that stirred my soldier's soul. The extended hood shone matte crimson beneath the vapor lamps, and the extended sleeper appeared elongated, customized. But it was the finer points that halted me. Markings carved into the lacquer, scarcely detectable beneath accumulated road dust. Angular designs that pained the eyes when viewed directly, like visual paradoxes engraved by someone with excessive leisure and excessive understanding of matters best left unexplored. You must be Cade. The words issued from a loudspeaker fixed to a post beside the rig. No human visible. That's me, I replied, sweeping the lot with my gaze. You, Lynn? I'm your coordinator. You will never lay eyes on me, and that arrangement benefits us both. The tone was neutral, perhaps electronically altered, delivered with the monotone of a person reciting memorized lines. The ignition keys are inside the cab. Your shipment is already secured. Your route chart is in the glove compartment together with payment specifications and conduct regulations. Regulations? I approached the driver's door, boots grinding on frozen gravel. 10 of them affixed to your instrument panel? Study them thoroughly. Obey them precisely. They are not recommendations, Cade. They are the distinction between collecting $50,000 and joining the list of drivers who never returned. The speaker hissed with interference. The collection point is Brevig Mission beyond Nome. You'll follow the Elliott Highway, then diverge onto paths absent from ordinary charts. The chart in the glove compartment is your gospel. Your GPS will deceive you. Commercial satellites cannot perceive the path you will travel. This is critical. The chart is reality. All else is illusion. I climbed into the cabin. The interior was spotless, yet odd. The seats were newer than the vehicle, upholstered in a synthetic fabric that remained warm despite the exterior cold. The instrument cluster was conventional, but the CB unit appeared modified, extra frequencies labeled in weathered amber paint. And there, secured to the upper dash with what resembled ancient vellum, were the regulations. I studied them twice, tension coiling in my gut with every sentence. Lynn, I said, aware they could hear me, what precisely am I transporting? Archival stage props, delicate, priceless to specific patrons. The silence lingered just long enough to feel deliberate. Refrain from inquiries you do not truly wish answered. Your collection is scheduled for 0600 tomorrow. It is a 14-hour journey to Brevig Mission from this location. I recommend you depart promptly. And should I reconsider, another candidate accepts the contract and you remain in budget motels, penniless. I know why you require these funds. I know about Fort Richardson and Staff Sergeant Hendricks and the inventory discrepancy you never committed. This is your opportunity for absolution. Accept it or depart, but choose immediately. The speaker fell silent. I remained in the heated cabin rereading the regulations a third time. The generator must operate without interruption. Do not halt for any cause between designated mileposts. Never turn left at intersections. The CB must remain on channel 19 unless weeping or dramatic monologue is detected. Do not examine noises originating from the trailer. Do not recognize shapes upon the ice. Refuel exclusively at Yerrick's truck stop. The chart is reality. Do not recite dialogue aloud. You are the operator, not a performer. That final one sent an inexplicable chill through me. But $50,000. I turned the key. The Kenworth awakened with a note lower and more unnatural than any diesel I had ever operated. The generator engaged automatically, and heated air poured from the vents. The carved markings on the hood appeared to flicker at the edge of my vision, yet when I stared directly, they were merely abrasions in aged paint. I extracted the route chart from the glove compartment, hand-illustrated on thick stock that felt like parchment. It depicted a course that branched from the Elliott Highway into territory labeled only as restricted interior access. The destination coordinates were inscribed in the same amber pigment as the regulations: 66.6 north, 161.3 west. 28 hours afterward, I traveled through terrain that should not exist. The journey to Brevig Mission had been ordinary enough. Simply the prolonged nocturnal traverse across Alaska's interior in December, when darkness devours everything except your headlamps and the stars above, burn so fiercely they seem accusatory. The village itself was barely present. A handful of structures huddled against the Bering Sea gale, population perhaps 400, mostly indigenous families rooted there for generations. The collection site was a derelict gold extraction complex from the territorial era. A maze of decaying timber frames and rusted machinery at the terminus of a road the chart depicted, but satellite imagery omitted. I arrived at first light, which in December meant a brief ashen glow on the eastern sky. They awaited me. 6 figures in heavy Arctic gear and featureless porcelain masks encircled a 6-sided crate positioned on a pallet in the snow. The crate was approximately 6 feet per face, constructed of a substance resembling metal, yet fundamentally incorrect. Too flawless, too frigid, refracting illumination at impossible angles. Frost crystallized in spiral motifs across its surface. No one uttered a word. They raised it with a portable hoist, operating with the exactitude of either military drill or sacred ceremony. The entire procedure required 12 minutes. As they fastened the crate inside my trailer with chains older than the vehicle itself, one masked worker pressed a folded note into my palm. The monarch recalls every understudy. I wanted to demand explanation. The question perished in my throat when the mask tilted toward me. Through the eye openings, I saw nothing. Not shadow. Nothing. A void that erased the inquiry from my mind. They completed the task, secured the trailer doors with a padlock for which I received no key, and vanished into the pre-dawn gloom. Their footfalls produced no sound upon the snow. I stood alone beside my rig in an abandoned mine beneath a sky just beginning to display the initial shimmer of northern lights, and every instinct screamed to abandon the truck, to flee, to thumb a ride back to civilization. But $50,000. I re-entered the cab, verified the generator continued its vigil as the first regulation demanded, and unfolded the return chart. The homeward course diverged instantly from any familiar road, heading northeast into the Brooks Range, along a path labeled merely Interior Road. The initial 100 miles felt almost tranquil. The Dalton Highway, deserted in winter save for rare supply rigs bound for the oil fields. My headlamps carved corridors through darkness so absolute it felt tangible. The aurora commenced its nightly spectacle overhead, emerald veils dancing and writhing in the magnetic currents. Then I passed mile marker 77. The chart indicated an unmarked turnoff, unpaved, merely twin ruts in the snow vanishing into wilderness. Do not halt for any cause between mile marker 77 and mile marker 333. I checked fuel, 3/4 remaining. The generator purred steadily. I turned onto the spur and abandoned civilization. For 6 hours, I drove through a landscape that grew increasingly otherworldly with every mile. The trees became unnatural, excessively tall and slender, branches extending skyward in postures resembling supplication. The snow reflected the aurora in hues that had no name, shades my mind refused to catalog, and the silence was total. The CB remained on channel 19 as mandated, broadcasting only the hiss of a deceased cosmos. At 0200 hours, Regulation 6 engaged. Headlamps materialized in my mirrors, matching my velocity precisely. 55 miles per hour across terrain where 55 should have been suicidal. Yet there they were, twin flawless orbs of white maintaining perfect interval. I observed them, grip tightening on the wheel. and experienced the first genuine surge of terror. The regulation was explicit. Do not acknowledge them. Do not signal. Reduce speed to 33 miles per hour for precisely 3.3 minutes. I complied. I decelerated smoothly, counting seconds with the discipline my instructors had drilled into me. The landscape inched past. The headlamps preserved distance, decelerating in perfect synchrony, flawless and erroneous. I reached 198 seconds, 3.3 minutes, and accelerated again to 55. The headlamps disappeared, not receding but simply ceasing existence between one heartbeat and the next. I exhaled, unaware I'd been holding my breath. The regulations were bizarre, yet effective. Adhere to them precisely, and the uncanny remained at a distance. I could manage this. I excelled at following protocol, at discipline. $50,000. Vindicate my record. Begin anew. The aurora swelled, emerald bleeding into amber and unnatural golds. At 0445 hours, I arrived at the intersection. The chart was unambiguous. Proceed straight. The course continued northeast, traced in amber pigment, yet my GPS, which I had not destroyed despite Regulation 9's instruction to do so if it contradicted the chart, abruptly activated. Recalculating. Turn left in 500 feet for fastest route. I frowned at the screen. It displayed a left turn that would shave 40 miles in 2 hours. The chart demanded straight ahead. The GPS recalculated once more. Severe weather ahead on current path. Alternate route advised. Turn left. Through the windshield, I saw the reason. To the right, north and east, a wall of white advanced. A blizzard descending from the Brooks Range with the certainty of an avalanche. To the left, south, and west, the sky remained relatively clear, lit only by the aurora's dance. At an intersection, you may turn right or proceed straight. You must never turn left. Yet the storm approached rapidly, and I was hundreds of miles from shelter, and 40 miles saved could mean survival rather than freezing in a stranded vehicle. The GPS insisted. My training, my logistics background, my rational mind all urged, take the clear path, evade the hazard. Regulation 3 stated, never turn left. I paused at the junction. The crossroads was marked by weathered wooden posts, gray with age, carved with additional angular symbols. The left branch appeared well-traveled, unobstructed. The straight path plunged directly into the oncoming whiteout. Turn left now, the GPS commanded. I turned left. The universe shifted, not gradually, not subtly. The instant my front tires crossed the threshold, existence snapped like an overstretched elastic. The aurora overhead bled away its green and flooded with a uniform, nauseating yellow gold that throbbed with living cadence. The engine note dropped into a deeper register that vibrated in my ribcage like an additional heartbeat. Cabin temperature spiked 10 degrees, then plummeted 20, then settled at a sensation that felt fundamentally incorrect against my skin. And the noise from the trailer, which I had ignored in compliance with Regulation 5, escalated. A rhythmic pounding, wet and organic, like something enormous inhaling. I glanced at the dashboard. The vellum bearing the 10 regulations was smoldering. Thin plumes rose from the amber lettering of Regulation 3. Never turn left. As I watched, the characters charred to cinders and scattered in a breeze that had no business existing inside the sealed cab. Within moments, Regulation 3 was erased, leaving only blank aged paper. The CB crackled alive. Act 1, Scene 1. The voice was grandiose, oratorical, addressing an unseen audience. Enter the driver, deviated from his course. The stage is prepared. The spectators assemble. The monarch awaits his player, static. Then, in a murmur that mimicked my father's voice, my father dead these 3 years. You always struggled with instructions, boy. Now you learn why regulations matter. I stared at the obliterated rule, at the jaundiced sky ahead, at the road now resembling painted stage planks dusted white. 9 regulations survived, and somewhere ahead through the amber fog I glimpsed headlamps approaching. Not from behind this time, but head-on, unwavering, inevitable. The performance had commenced, and I had already flubbed my entrance cue. The oncoming headlamps belonged to no vehicle I recognized. They floated in the yellow-tinged darkness, elevated, widely spaced, their beams slicing the altered terrain like prison searchlights. I maintained 55, hands locked on the wheel, awaiting resolution into something rational. A snowplow, a mining truck, anything explainable. They never neared. They never receded. They simply remained. twin unblinking eyes observing me descend deeper into whatever existence had become after my left turn. At 05:12 hours, I felt the next regulation perish. The vellum smoked again, that impossible interior wind tugging at regulation 7. Do not acknowledge the figures on the ice. The lettering dissolved into ash and vanished, leaving another void. 6 regulations remained. That was when I saw them. To my left, where the road paralleled a frozen river, shapes glided across the ice. Tall, impossibly attenuated. They progressed with theatrical gait, joints flexing at erroneous angles, motions too exact, like puppets manipulated by someone unfamiliar with human anatomy. They wore ragged evening attire, tailcoats, top hats, gowns from a bygone century, all crusted with rime and grime. I attempted not to look. Regulation 7 had forbidden acknowledgement, but Regulation 7 was gone, obliterated the instant they manifested. One rotated its head toward me. No face, only a smooth, reflective surface like an unpainted mask. My own headlamps reflected back from where features should have been, warped and distorted. It lifted one arm in stiff, performative motion and waved. I fixed my gaze forward. The figures matched my velocity precisely, sliding across the frozen river without breaking rhythm, never falling behind. There were 20, perhaps more, all moving in flawless synchrony like a chorus line from some infernal revue. The CB hissed. The walkers have entered the scene. The grandiose voice again, projecting to its invisible audience. Stage left, observing, anticipating. They recall their parts. Do you recall yours, operator? I offered no reply. Regulation 10 remained. You are the operator, not a performer. Do not speak dialogue aloud. I clung to it. At 05:47 hours, my fuel gauge read 1/4. The chart indicated Yerrick's truck stop 30 miles ahead. Regulation 8. Yerrick's truck stop is the sole sanctuary. Refuel only here. If the attendant inquires about the weather, reply the sun is a radiant proscenium. I needed that stop, not merely for fuel, but for a moment of normality, for evidence that reality persisted somewhere beyond this jaundiced nightmare. The walkers accompanied me another 40 minutes. Then, as I crested a ridge and spotted the truck stop's illumination below, they halted at the riverbank. All simultaneously pivoted their blank visages toward me, executed a synchronized courtly bow, and retreated backward into obscurity, vanished. The truck stop glowed like a beacon. Yerrick's lay in a shallow basin, a collection of weathered structures yet maintained, fuel islands beneath sagging canopies, a central building with windows radiating warm amber, not the diseased gold of the altered sky. 2 additional rigs parked in the lot, occupancy uncertain. I eased to the pumps at 06:34 hours. The generator still thrummed. Regulation 1, keep it operating always. The main door opened and a man emerged. Tall, gaunt, human gaunt, not walker gaunt, with a face etched by exhaustion and dread. Grease-stained coveralls, something darker beneath. His eyes met mine through the glass, and I recognized not me personally, but my condition. Another operator who had violated protocol. I descended, keeping one hand on the door. The cold struck like a physical assault, -30 at least, perhaps colder. My breath crystallized instantly, yet the cold felt authentic, pure, unlike the earlier unnatural fluctuations. You turned left. Yerrick's voice was gravel, disused. Not a question, an acknowledgement of fact. They always turn left, eventually. The GPS misleads or the road collapses or caribou block the straight path. Always a pretext. The right demands the error, demands the taint. He began fueling. His hands trembled. How long have you been stationed here? I asked. 3 years, perhaps 4. Time behaves strangely between acts. He gestured vaguely at the surrounding terrain. This place is real, yet also not. It exists because the regulations declare it exists. Regulation 8. I am now scripted, the attendant reciting his role, Lynn informed me. Lynn informs everyone whatever they need to hear to accept the assignment. Yerrick's laugh was bitter. I was a coordinator once. Before that, an operator. We all rotate. Those who endure. Operator to coordinator to this. He studied his hands. I saw why. His fingers were translucent, not transparent, translucent, bone and tendon visible yet fading, losing substance. They know you violated Regulation 3, Yerrick continued, voice tightening. They know because I reported it, required by my current role. Every operator who stops here, I must file their status. He pointed beyond me to the ridgeline. Silhouettes, dozens, hundreds, motionless against the jaundiced sky. The audience. They await, Yerrick whispered, to see whether you will perform or resist. Either way, the drama proceeds. It always proceeds. The pump clicked full. Yerrick replaced the nozzle, his translucent hands executing the motions. You are supposed to inquire about the weather. I recalled Regulation 8. Something like grief crossed his face. I answered incorrectly last time. An operator passed through yesterday, or last week, time distorts, and he asked first. I forgot my line. Said it was cold instead of... He swallowed. His hands dissolved faster. I could see the pump through them. The sun is a radiant proscenium, I said softly. Yes, his voice already distant. That is the line. Always has been. But I forgot. And when you forget your dialogue, the director recasts. He glanced toward the main building, then back. Move. The walkers were merely the prologue. The pursuer approaches, and you do not wish to be stationary upon its arrival. How do I end this? You cannot end a drama already in progress. You can only... His form grew translucent like dawn fog. Attempt to rewrite the finale. The intersection. It always returns to the intersection. He walked away toward the gathering blizzard at the edge of illumination. With each step, he became less substantial. By the time he reached the darkness, he was merely the suggestion of a man, then nothing. I stood alone beneath the canopy, bathed in warm light as regulations continued to perish. Regulation 4 smoked on the dash. The CB radio remains on channel 19. The lettering vanished instantly. The CB erupted, not static but voices, overlapping, endless, weeping, laughter, and beneath it, recitation of a play I had never read yet somehow recognized. Casilda, we shall perish together then, Camilla together, but the monarch. Regulation 5 followed instants later. You transport archival stage props. Do not investigate noises from the trailer. The safeguard dissolved, and the sounds I had dismissed as imagination became unmistakably, horrifyingly authentic. Metal scraping metal. Beneath it, a rhythmic pulsation, like a colossal heart within the cargo hold. The relic was roused and ravenous. The silhouettes on the ridgeline began descending, the audience drawn by the unraveling ceremony. I sprinted to the cab, began pulling away, hands trembling despite my training. 3 regulations remained. No, I recounted. 1, 8, 9, 10, 4. Headlamps appeared behind, not the distant pair, but close, tangible. A truck, a Kenworth like mine yet older, more wrong, entered the lot with predatory smoothness, positioning itself between me and the exit. The driver's door opened. The figure that emerged wore a yellow slicker of the type used by deep-sea fishermen, but its movements were too fluid, too calculated. Its face was a pale mask, features shifting, rearranging, cycling through visages as if struggling to recall humanity. The pursuer. It stood before my bumper in my headlamp beams and raised one hand. Remain. I floored the accelerator. The Kenworth surged. The pursuer did not flinch. For one terrible instant, I believed I would strike it. At the last moment, it sidestepped with impossible elegance, and I passed, racing into darkness, abandoning Yerrick's refuge. The pursuer's rig followed. For the next hour, it toyed with me. Light taps against my rear bumper that shuddered the entire vehicle, pulling alongside on straight sections close enough to glimpse its mask face watching through the glass. It did not seek my death. It herded me north and east, away from the charted course. The CB voices swelled, dozens, hundreds, reciting passages from The King in Yellow, merging into a dreadful choir. At 8:12 hours, the pursuer executed its maneuver. It overtook, then swerved across my lane on a bend. I could collide or veer right. I veered, tires lost purchase on ice, and abruptly I skidded toward an abyss unseen in the jaundiced gloom. A precipice, a plunge into nothingness. I braked hard. The Kenworth shuddered, fish-tailed, and halted with front wheels inches from the edge. Regulation 2 perished. Do not halt for any cause between mile marker 77 and mile marker 333. The lettering smoked and vanished. I had been compelled to stop. Outside, the walkers emerged from shadow. They encircled the truck in a loose ring, blank faces directed toward me. 20, 30, 50. More arriving constantly. They advanced with choreographed precision. One by one, they pressed their smooth, reflective masks against my glass, staring inward with voids that reflected my own terror in warped loops. The CB murmured, intimate now, speaking solely to me. Your cue approaches, operator. The second act cannot commence without its protagonist. Will you accept your role? Will you deliver your lines? Or will you persist in pretending you are anything but what the narrative demands? I stared at the vellum that once bore 10 regulations in glowing amber script. Now only 4 endured. Regulation 1. The generator must operate without cease. Regulation 8. Yarek's truck stop is the sole sanctuary, but Yarek had dissolved and that sanctuary no longer existed. Regulation 9. The chart is reality. The chart that had guided me to this cliffside surrounded by the monarch's disciples. Regulation 10. You are the operator, not a performer. 4 regulations, 4 fragile shields against the drama scripting itself around me, into me, through me. The walkers pressed nearer. Their blank masks left no breath fog on the glass, no proof they had ever been human. Behind them, the pursuer's rig idled across the Soul Escape, its driver beside it, yellow slicker vivid against the dark, shifting mask, watching, waiting. The pulsation from my trailer synchronized with my pulse. The drama accelerated toward its second act, and I was exhausting ways to decline my role. The walkers remained pressed against my windows for 17 minutes. I counted every second, breath fogging inches from their reflective voids. They neither moved nor breathed, merely observed with impossible absence that mirrored my panic in endless distortion. Then, at 29 hours, they withdrew, all simultaneously, retreating 30-50 feet. They formed a loose ring around the truck, motionless as statues, and I understood with nauseous certainty they were not departing. They awaited the next scene. That was when I felt it. The pulsation from the trailer, haunting since Regulation 5 perished, altered cadence, slowed, and with a lurch of recognition that hollowed my stomach, I realized it was syncing, not mimicking, but merging with my own heartbeat, pulse for pulse, unifying into a single rhythm. My vision swam, not from fatigue or cold, but from something forcing entry into my consciousness. Images not my own. Visions of a place impossible, a vast metropolis of yellow stone that hurt to comprehend, towers ascending toward a black sun casting no shadows, avenues filled with figures in ragged formal attire, marching endlessly toward a colossal amphitheater. And at its center, upon a throne of bone or coral or something between, a tall figure robed, pale masked, the monarch. He was motionless, yet I felt his attention pivot, felt that dreadful gaze begin its slow rotation toward me. I gasped, the vision shattered. My hands trembled on the wheel. The unified heartbeat persisted, patient, inexorable. The relic was not merely awake, it was revealing its origin. Carcosa, the destination the corrupted rite sought to reach. The satellite phone rang. I seized it desperately, craving any human voice, any proof reality endured beyond this nightmare. Lynn, Cade, their voice strained, distorted by static resembling screams. Listen closely. I have little time before they detect this call. Who? The ones who contracted me? Who contracted you? Those who have operated this route longer than Alaska has been a state. A pause. I heard what might have been a sob. I was an operator once. 3 runs. I violated regulations on each. Minor infractions, errors. Yet I survived. They promoted me to coordinator, claiming I had earned a position in the production. I believed that meant freedom. The CB crackled with theatrical laughter. The walkers outside advanced one synchronized step. The regulations are not for the object in your trailer, Lynn hurried. They exist to exclude the narrative, the monarch's tale. It yearns to be told, to spread, and every operator is a potential vessel. You violated Regulation 3. You corrupted the rite. Now it is not merely performing, it is rewriting you into the drama. Your options diminish, Cade. The surviving regulations are your final defenses. How do I halt it? You cannot halt a tale already begun. You can only... The line dissolved into static. When Lynn returned, faint, desperate. The intersection, Cade. It always returns to the intersection. That is where you fractured the script. That is where... The call ended. I looked at the dashboard. Regulation 8 smoked. Yarek's truck stop is the sole sanctuary. The lettering dissolved and something within me fractured. 3 regulations remained. My low fuel warning had glowed for 20 miles. I needed motion. The walker's ring tightened, their choreographed motions growing aggressive, insistent. The pursuer's rig still blocked the clear path, its operator invisible. My opportunity. I reversed hard, tires shrieking on ice, swung the Kenworth in a wide arc away from the precipice. The walkers scattered with jerky, unnatural motions, then reformed. I found a gap and floored it. The chart indicated another Yerrick's location 40 miles northeast. I drove toward it because I had no alternative. The fuel needle rested below empty, sustained by fumes and whatever physics still functioned in this jaundiced realm. At 09:47 hours, I reached the coordinates. The truck stop existed, or its corpse did. Charred husks of structures, collapsed canopies over pumps encrusted with dry ice smoking faintly. Shattered windows, door ajar. Through it, furniture arranged like an abandoned set. Across the roadway, blocking egress, idled the pursuer's rig, engine growling wrong, resonant. The door opened. The figure emerged with predatory poise. Tall, perhaps 7 feet, proportions difficult to gauge. Yellow slicker draped a frame suggesting human, yet hollow, animated by something merely imitating flesh. Its pale mask shifted features ceaselessly, attempting to recall its former humanity, its former life as an operator like me. It raised one arm, pointed at my trailer, then toward distant mountains no longer mountains, too symmetrical, too flawless, painted flats mimicking peaks. The command was unmistakable. Deliver. Complete the performance. Accept your role. Something inside me broke. Perhaps the training that taught me to fight when cornered. Perhaps the fury of a man with nothing remaining to lose. Perhaps simple human obstinacy against being shepherded to scripted doom. I studied my rig, truly studied it for the first time since the regulations began failing. The symbols carved into the hood, noticed that first day in Fairbanks, now glowed faint yellow gold, pulsing in time with the relic's heartbeat. The vehicle was not mere transport. It was component of the rite, inscribed with bindings or wards or something beyond my vocabulary. I had moved convoys through Kandahar under fire. I had improvised repairs on broken machinery while bullets flew. I understood vehicles, mass, momentum, how to transform a 40-ton rig into a battering ram. The pursuer awaited obedience. I aimed the reinforced grille at its torso and floored it. The collision was devastating. The pursuer shifted at the final instant. That impossible fluidity, but too late. My bumper caught its trailer hitch. Physics prevailed. Metal screamed. The pursuer's rig spun, jackknifing. I kept the throttle down, shoving, using my momentum to drive it off the roadway. The yellow-slickered figure turned its shifting mask toward me. I sensed recognition. It remembered attempting the same desperate act in its own terminal moments before the narrative consumed it. It reached toward my cab. I wrenched the wheel, using its rig as pivot, felt something yield. The coupling shattered. The pursuer's trailer detached, sliding across ice toward the burned shells. Its tractor spun. For a moment we were parallel, close enough to see within. Yellow light and thousands of pages plastered everywhere, covered in the theatrical script echoing from my CB. A prison of narrative. Then my Kenworth lurched free and I accelerated, damaged rig shuddering with every turn of the crankshaft. Victory was hollow. My windshield cracked in the collision, spiderwebbed completely, and imploded inward. Laminated glass exploded across the cab in a glittering storm. Killing cold rushed in, -40 or worse, accompanied by whispers, dozens, no longer confined to the CB but flooding the breached cab. They knew my name, my service history, knew about Hendricks and the fabricated accusation that ended my career. Cade Morrison, the thief who never stole, the innocent bearing guilt. How perfectly tragic, how perfectly cast. I struggled for control, one hand on the wheel, the other shielding my face from wind like blades. Ice formed instantly on exposed skin. My breath froze. The generator still functioned, Regulation 1 still shielding me. But with the windshield gone, the cab was compromised. The CB spoke, and this time the voice halted my heart. All the world's a stage, Cade. My father's voice, dead 3 years. Unmistakable timbre, faint drawl, the same disappointed cadence used when I confessed the discharge. And you, son, are tragically unprepared for your part. You never followed through. Not in the service. Not with your mother before she abandoned us. Not now. You will fail again. You always fail. It is who you are. It is your scripted line. No, I whispered. Speak louder, Cade. The audience cannot hear. No, I screamed. Denial, rage, 3 years of grief and false shame, screamed against the voice that wore my father's timbre but was not him, merely another mask the narrative donned to break me. I am not your performer. I am not part of your cursed drama. The words reverberated through the cab, through frozen air, through the jaundiced world. On the dashboard, Regulation 10 began to smolder. You are the operator, not a performer. Do not speak dialogue aloud. I had spoken. I had answered. I had engaged the narrative and thereby granted it power. The lettering charred and scattered in the gale, tearing through the shattered windshield. I stared at the vellum with numb hands. 2 regulations remained. Regulation 1, the generator must operate without cease. Regulation 9, the chart is reality. Even as I watched, Regulation 9's lettering faded, not from violation, but irrelevance. The chart no longer mattered. I had strayed so far from its path, its guidance was meaningless. The Kenworth's engine coughed, faltered. The generator's steadfast hum wavered for the first time. Lights flickered. In that dimness, I glimpsed them in my mirrors. Walkers, hundreds now, marching in vast procession. The audience lined both ridges, silhouettes against a sky deepened to bruised, living gold pulsing like the interior of something organic. Behind me, the trailer's relic screamed, not audibly but as pressure, reality rupturing, the narrative's seed frantic to germinate before its vessel failed. My damaged engine coughed again. Minutes at best before total failure, before Regulation 1 collapsed and the final shield vanished. The CB whispered, Act 3, the operator alone upon a bare stage. How will our protagonist depart? Will he take his bow or improvise? Ahead, the road stretched into darkness, increasingly resembling a theater wing, the area where performers await entrance. I had one regulation remaining, one fading barrier between absorption into the monarch's eternal drama and whatever remained of me, and my truck was dying. The engine expired at 10:23 hours, not catastrophically, but dropping to an idle so low I felt rather than heard it. The generator's hum, my constant companion for 2 days and a lifetime, fluttered like a candle in storm. Lights dimmed. In that near darkness, with lethal cold flooding through the ruined windshield, I understood with perfect clarity that defeat was imminent. Regulation 1, the generator must operate without cease, was the final bulwark against whatever lurked in the jaundiced gloom, and it was failing. Minutes, perhaps seconds. My hands numb, I fumbled the engine access panel behind the seats. The collision had severed something critical, fuel line or alternator mount. Oil and diesel reek filled the cab, mingling with frost and something else, old grease paint and dust. Outside they assembled. Through the broken glass and mirrors, I watched them materialize like actors taking marks. Walkers in ragged finery forming ranks on both sides of the road. Whisperers, hollowed forms glowing yellow, mouths reciting endlessly, shambling closer, and stranger entities that wounded perception, geometries that made my trained mind recoil. The audience had come for the final act. I jury-rigged a bypass with CB wire and emergency tape, fingers clumsy, breath crystallizing in -40 air. The exterior world transformed in real time. Mountains flattened into painted backdrops of a non-existent city. Snow became scattered confetti as if a lazy stagehand had dressed the set. Reality was becoming theater. The generator caught, surged, lights flared. I felt the narrative itself recoil from the renewed barrier. The disciples wavered, disappointed, but the reprieve was temporary. The engine rattled with imminent death. The satellite phone rang. Cade, Lynn's voice barely audible through static like screams. Are you still there? Are you still you? For now, I managed through chattering teeth. Listen, final call. They are closing me down. I feel the script coiling around me, recasting me. The rite is corrupted, but not concluded. You cannot complete delivery. The destination is a snare. The relic will anchor, and Carcosa will pour through. How do I end it? You do not end it. Lynn's voice fractured. You redirect it. The relic is narrative seed. It requires soil. You wounded the right when you turned left at the intersection. There the membrane is thinnest, where you broke the script. Plant it there. Turn the right's own fracture against it. Make the intersection the anchor instead of you. How? Return. Open the trailer at the precise center. The relic will oblige. It craves propagation. Offer it the intersection instead of the world. The vortex will devour all. The relic, the disciples, perhaps the monarch's gaze itself. The wound will seal. You may survive, perhaps. Lynn laughed like shattering crystal. Certainty ends once rules are broken, Cade. But it is the only way. The call terminated with a sound like ripping canvas. I looked at the vellum, blank save one fading line of amber ink. The generator must operate without cease. Even as I watched, it began to smolder. No, not yet. I slammed the panel, engaged gear, spun the wheel. The truck protested, damaged, dying, but responded. I no longer drove toward painted mountains. I drove back to the intersection, back to my error. The disciples reacted instantly. Walker's synchrony dissolved into frenzy. Whisperer's recitations became shrieks. Nameless shapes surged toward the roadway. They comprehended my intent. Improvisation, rewriting the conclusion, and the narrative howled in outrage. The CB exploded. No, the operator cannot exit stage left. The operator must complete his entrance. The monarch awaits. The audience insists. I tore the CB from its mount and hurled it through the broken windshield. The path behind, if still a path, resembled a theater wing, the shadowed area behind the curtain. Yet in the distance I saw it, the intersection where I had turned left hours that felt like lifetimes ago. The wooden posts still stood, carved symbols now blazing amber, marking the wound I had inflicted upon the right. The engine coughed. The generator faltered again. Regulation 1's lettering charred and scattered in the gale tearing through the cab. Lights extinguished. Darkness and silence crashed like a physical force. Sanctuary gone. I was naked, defenseless, a man piloting a dying truck through a reality no longer wholly real. The disciples spoke directly into my skull. No CB needed. Hundreds in unison. Take your bow. Embrace your role. The monarch's drama is eternal. You are ours. You are written. You are performed. But I was close, so close. The jaundiced sky had deepened to bruised, living gold throbbing like the interior of something alive. Pressure built. Not sound, not light, but presence. Vast, ancient, terrible. The monarch himself drew near the stage, lured by the corrupted right, by the prospect of ingress. The relic in my trailer screamed, not audibly, but as tearing reality attempting to split like a chrysalis. The heartbeat that had merged with mine now hammered from outside, striving to overwrite me from flesh to spirit. I reached the intersection at 10:47 hours, my final military time check, my last tether to who I had been. The Kenworth coasted to the exact center on momentum and desperation. Engine dead, generator silent, everything dark save the amber glow from the sky and the blazing symbols on the posts marking this place as charged, ruptured, wrong. I kicked the door open and stumbled into cold beyond temperature, beyond physics. The disciples encircled the intersection in concentric rings hundreds deep, watching. Whisperers shambled nearer, hollow faces turned toward me. On the horizon, a tall, silent figure robed, pale-masked, motionless, the monarch observing his drama reach climax. I staggered to the trailer. My hands were beyond numb, yet I located the pursuer's wrecked coupling nearby. I had passed it on the return. I used the twisted metal as a pry bar, jammed it into my trailer's lock, wrenched with strength born of spite and stubborn refusal to be authored. The lock shattered. Doors swung wide. I did not look within. Lynn had been correct about that. But I felt it. The six-sided crate, the relic, the narrative seed that desired only to propagate, rewrite, devour. It pulsed invitation and hunger, offering roles, identities, eternal position in a drama where the monarch forever reigned and performers never left the stage. I seized the winch cable blind, hooked it to the crate's chains, struck the control. The motor groaned, powered by whatever physics lingered, and hauled the hexagonal abomination into the snow at the intersection's precise center. Reality screamed. The relic activated, not with noise, but with wrongness. The air peeled like flesh. Through the wound, I beheld Carcosa in full impossible madness. Towers ascending toward a black sun, streets of endless processions, the amphitheater where faceless multitudes watched eternally. Upon the throne of bone and coral and things between, the monarch, tall, terrible, silent, his pale mask turning to gaze directly at me across worlds. I felt his attention like gravity, like the weight of an entire narrative attempting to collapse inward. He rose. The audience of Carcosa turned as one, but the intersection beneath the relic was the wound, The script fracture, the site of my corruption. Narrative energy-seeking anchor flooded into that wound instead of into me. The vortex formed, not a hole, but an unbeing at the center where the relic rested. Disciples shrieked. Walkers lurched not toward me but toward the vortex, dragged by force greater than the monarch's will. Whisperers stumbled, hollow forms sucked inward. Even the stranger geometries were torn screaming into the gap, finally receiving their exit, their curtain call. The pursuer's wreckage slid past, metal shrieking on ice as it was devoured. Air itself folded inward. I clutched my truck's wheel well against the suction, watching hundreds of disciples, failed operators, consumed souls, drawn into the wound to cauterize it from within. Some resisted, some appeared relieved. All vanished within seconds. The monarch stood at the threshold between Carcosa and the intersection, mask still fixed upon me. For an eternal instant I understood. He was eternal. The drama would never truly end. But this performance was concluded, this breach sealed. He would wait. He excelled at waiting. Eventually, another operator would turn left at another intersection, and the right would recommence. The monarch retreated into Carcosa. The vortex imploded with the sound of a falling curtain. Silence. The jaundiced hue bled from the sky like fading footlights. Bruised gold became gray, then black, then the first true cold blue of dawn. Distant mountains were mountains again. Raw, Alaskan, indifferent. Snow was snow. I released the wheel well and collapsed onto the ice. The intersection was empty. No relic, no disciples, no vortex, only frozen earth, the carved posts, and my dead truck at the center like an offering politely refused. The vellum on the dash was blank parchment, all 10 lines erased, meaningless now. My watch read 10:51 hours, 4 minutes since opening the trailer. It had felt like lifetimes. I began walking. An Alaska state trooper discovered me at 13:40 hours, 8 miles down the highway, near frozen and incoherent. He wrapped me in thermal blankets, placed me in his heated cruiser, summoned medical aid. I attempted explanation. Words emerged garbled. Impossible. He nodded with the condescension reserved for hypothermia cases and assured me I was fortunate to be alive. They recovered my truck 3 days later. Empty trailer, no cargo, no trace of what I had carried or where I had traveled. The hood symbols were mere scratches in old paint. My account was dismissed as cold-induced delusion. The hiring entity never existed. The dark web posting vanished. Encrypted messages dissolved. Even the financial trail evaporated. No contract, no $50,000, no exoneration. But I kept the blank vellum from the dashboard, carried it from the hospital, kept it in my wallet when I returned to legitimate hauling, normal routes, normal freight beneath normal skies. Sometimes in the dead of night while pulling a load across some desolate highway, I remove that parchment and examine it beneath the dome light. Most nights it remains blank. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes, a single word appears in faint amber script, glowing just enough to read, Encore. And on those nights, if I check my mirrors, I may glimpse headlamps matching my speed precisely, or hear a whisper of static on Channel 19 resembling theatrical laughter, or notice the silhouette of a Kenworth that looks disturbingly familiar, parked at a rest area I swear was not there moments before. The monarch's drama never truly concludes. It merely waits, patient eternal, for the next performer to miss their cue.